All right, and we're live here with Pete Hoefling. Did I say it right? Did I pronounce your last name correctly for starters?
It's close enough.
All right, appreciate the graciousness there. So first of all, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It was kind of funny because I asked you to come on, and like right away you agreed. You said you'd be happy to, and then I announced it, and everyone was like congratulating me. They're like, "Wow, that's a big deal. Pete's coming on the show. That's huge." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, we need to learn about what Star City Games is all about and the conventions." We were talking a little bit beforehand about my background and how I started with Magic, but got away from the TCG scene for a while. So I actually have not been to an SCG Con myself. So I kind of wanted to have you on to tell us a little bit about what the experience is like. And of course, with Sorcery and this audience being into Sorcery, what we can expect from Sorcery's big debut announcement and first appearances coming up at a few venues.
Sure.
So do you just want to kind of introduce yourself and just kind of give the elevator pitch of your background?
Sure. So my name is Pete Hoefling. I'm the founder and president of Star City Games, and what has now grown to be, it used to be the SCG Tour. Back in the day, it feels weird to kind of say that, but years ago, it used to be the SCG Tour, and now it's kind of morphed into SCG Con post-COVID. I've been involved in the industry one way or another for my entire life, so 30 plus years, and I'm 50 years old. It's pretty much all I've ever done. Started out with comic books, began carrying TCGs. My personal passion shifted from comic books to TCGs, phased out comic books, kind of went all in on TCGs, blew that up, discovered eBay, discovered the internet, kind of blew things up in that space. And then at some point, fast forward a bunch of years, came back to comic books and a bunch of other collectibles. And our brick and mortar store kind of still focuses on all that stuff, but online we're just strictly TCGs. And our SCG Con events are strictly TCGs as well.
Okay. So would you say is the core of your business the SCG Star City Games, the store, the brick and mortar that you own, or is the conventions kind of like equally weighted or a big portion of your business?
No, the main part of our business, the main focus of our business is our website. Okay. And our online sales. The convention aspect of our business is a considerable portion of our business, and one of the larger things that we do. The stores, the retail store, the brick and mortar game store is one of the smaller things that we do, but it's a lot of fun.
Okay, cool.
Something I still enjoy doing.
Yeah, awesome. So you're located primarily down in Roanoke. Is that where the store is and where you're based still?
Yeah, we're headquartered out of Roanoke, Virginia. We used to actually have a second brick and mortar location, but years ago we closed that down, consolidated everything into the one. So at some point we'll move into a larger facility, but I have no plans on relocating anywhere outside the area.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I know, Blacksburg is down there. That's probably what the area is best known for, maybe an hour south or more or less in Blacksburg area. Yep. So I actually worked down there for a couple of years, maybe 7-8 years ago. And I had never heard of, I'm in Northern Virginia. I didn't really know Blacksburg, or I'm from upstate New York. So I migrated down to Virginia, but I remember, I think that's when I first started hearing about your store when I was living down there in that area. And then the events, as some of these newer indie games started popping up, like I guess the probably, at least to my knowledge, the most successful recent example was Flesh and Blood. And I'm curious, as Sorcery is kind of partnered with you in a way here, and they're going to make a few appearances in at some of your events in Houston, Las Vegas, and Baltimore coming up this fall.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could touch on like what that. We'll talk about like what the SCG Con experience is, but I'm wondering like how that compares to Flesh and Blood also being an indie from New Zealand. And when it made that transition to SCG Con, did that really elevate the profile and awareness of that game?
I believe so, yes. It also helps that James White and the team that is behind Flesh and Blood, I'm a big believer in their product, in their brand, and in that team personally. And I think that's something that I would say they have in common with Sorcery, because it's one of the reasons why I was interested in working with Eric and the folks at Sorcery, is because it's another company where I believe that they have a really good product, a really good brand that I see a lot of potential in, and a really good team, albeit a small one at this point.
Okay.
And I felt that, like as was the case with Flesh and Blood, I felt that there was a situation where like they could add a lot of value to what we were doing, but we could add a lot of value to what they were doing, and we could just create a win-win situation for all parties. And I think it's worked out pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And looking at the history of those two games, it's somewhat similar, where like early stages it was very niche, and when you look at kind of the LGS network and the store presence, it's kind of hit or miss throughout the country, throughout the world. They immediately right out of Kickstarter, Sorcery went worldwide, which is ambitious, I think, in my opinion. Instead of focusing on the core in the US, they also opened it up to Europe and tried to establish distribution worldwide. So the store presence was very far spread. And I remember when I started first hearing about Flesh and Blood, it was in those 2018, 2019 timeframe where the game was just kind of on the cusp of breaking into mainstream awareness, but it was still very small. Like I had a couple stores an hour or two away that carried it, but it wasn't like widespread. And Sorcery is very similar, in my opinion, where it started small. It had a very successful Kickstarter, but the footprint is still kind of unknown. I even hear from some of the artists, they'll go to their LGS or a convention, and you know, it seems like a lot of the Magic crowd has resonated with it and the Flesh and Blood crowd, but some stores still have never heard of the game. But they've been at Gen Con the past few years, and now this is another step forward with SCG Con. Could you tell us, like, what is I know Gen Con's really big, you know, many thousand people. What is the average scale and size of like a Houston, Vegas, and Baltimore SCG Con?
It'll be a few thousand people, but that few thousand people, many of them will come on Friday and they'll stay for the entirety of the weekend. And because a lot of our events are focused on playing the actual games, so like we'll offer a lot of different tournaments for a lot of the different games that we carry or that we offer at SCG Cons. And we also do things like Learn to Play, which is something we're going to be doing with Sorcery as well. So between the players, the vendors, the artists, and all of the other special guests and stuff that we have at the events, like the room tends to be fairly full and fairly busy for the entirety of the event. Okay.
And so how does Learn to Play work? Is that facilitated by your staff, or does Eric's Curiosa's team come out and or have their own personnel teaching people?
So it varies depending on the publisher. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure how we've got things set up with the Sorcery folks. But like the Learn to Play area will be like a designated area within the SCG Con event where people who are curious about the game, who just want to, as the name says, learn how to play the game, or who may actually already know how to play the game but still have questions about how things work, sort of at that very basic beginner type level. Like that area is designed to cater to that type of player.
Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned the predominance of attendance, it's players. They come to presumably discover games, play games. There's tournament events, there's Learn to Plays, but it does seem like it's a mixed experience to some aspect, right? I was telling you beforehand that my primary interest category that I resonate with is collecting, but very much so the art, you know, the original arts. And when I've seen your SCG cons being promoted, there's like, you know, a picture of 15, 20 artists. I noticed Brian Wackwitz, who's a Magic Alpha guy who's now in Sorcery. He's been at some recently. I think he's going to one coming up. So with Sorcery, the Dragon Lord mini set is the big thing. They just had a massive presence of that at Gen Con. Jeff Menges was there. Ed Beard Jr. was there. Yep. And I know like Ed's very interested in trying to come to one of these SCG cons. So how would that work? Would he coordinate that with you, or do you know if Sorcery is intending to bring artists, or is that still kind of in flux?
So how it normally works at this point is the artists usually reach out to us. Okay. And then once the artist reaches out to us, like my team kind of facilitates making all of that happen at the various events. And the end result is, as you said, like we typically have about somewhere between 15 to 20, mostly Magic, but just TCG and general artists at our events. However, based on what you just said, I actually just made a note, and I will pass that along to my team. And I'll have somebody on my team actually reach out to Ed. We'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, I know. And I've been helping Ed promote like his Dragonlord mini set he's been painting these paintings for, I think, at least the last 2 years. So, the long lead cycle of Sorcery, it's annual releases, but the lead time for paintings is several years. Like some of these artists painted in 2017, 2018, we're only 3 sets in. But yeah, I know Ed was considering the Baltimore event because he's up in Pennsylvania and he was saying he could move some things around. I'll probably go to Baltimore myself, so I'm hoping to see him there. But the beauty of Gen Con was the line. I don't know if you heard about the Gen Con experience. They had about a 2-hour queue in the line. So it was like mass awareness for Sorcery in particular. That's a real attention grabber, when you have a line like that wrapping around the building. So
I was at Gen Con. I saw it firsthand. It was pretty impressive.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the line was always so long, I could never actually get to the booth to say hi and talk to a few folks, but I walked past every day and I saw it. It was very impressive.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome to see. Like, unfortunately, I couldn't make it out there. So I was kind of living vicariously through others, through the Sorcery community group and stuff. Everyone was posting pictures and everything. And I was getting texts from Ed and others about just how wild it was every day. So
it seemed like it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mixed experience. Then you have 15 or so artists. The interesting thing about Sorcery as well is there's a lot of MTG alpha artists, and then subsequent sets, like Magic people that are kind of known as Magic artists. Like Ed has had a mixed experience where he was Magic in early days, got away from it, had a very successful airbrush career, and all these other markets going to the Ren fairs and these things. But a lot of the Magic artists are now also becoming Sorcery artists. So there might be some natural overlap. But what is the experience like for, like, I wonder what it's like for like a non-player. If you're going to go there and maybe dabble in the learn to play, or maybe not play in the more competitive tournaments, is there enough of an artist scene where it can be like fun for just kind of casuals or collector types
and we have tons of people that show up and that don't actually play in any of the events that we're running. They actually just come to interact with the artist, to trade with other players. We get a lot of that, to just buy, sell, and trade with all of the vendors that are in attendance at the event, because we will typically have between 15 and 20 vendors at the events too, but they're some of the largest TCG vendors in the country. So there's a very, very extensive selection of mainly Magic, but as of late, it's actually been a lot more diverse as we've expanded into these other games. So the vendors that we have at the events have started bringing sealed product and singles for those other games, and they're finding that the demand is there for those products. So,
okay. And is that so? You say it was previously predominantly Magic, and I've noticed that there's been a rise of more indies coming to SCGcon, or startup games. Early phase games are in their first few years. Is that like an intentional kind of focus shift for you as the company, or is that kind of like a natural evolution of the market where there's a lot of new games right in the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, it definitely has been a deliberate shift. We started off with we started off as just Magic, and then we expanded into Flesh and Blood, and then over time we've expanded into a bunch of other games, like Bo Jackson Battle Arena, Wonders of the First, Vibes, now Sorcery, Star Wars Unlimited, Lorcana, and we're still going. So
yeah. And you get the typically, is there a booth or a setup for each of the games, like the creators or their staff that man a booth, or volunteers, or is it kind of mixed with your staff also representing the games?
It varies. Like so not all of those publishers choose to offer a learn to play setup at the events, but so some of them will do that. We'll have artists from some of those games, but not others. There's just a little bit of everything. Like some vendors will carry like they'll carry Magic, and they may carry like Flesh and Blood and Sorcery, but they don't carry the other stuff. But then we'll have other vendors that specialize in the other stuff, but don't carry Flesh and Blood or Sorcery. Okay.
So the vendors, like, are the vendors typically like card single sellers, that type of thing? Or I've seen the statue products from Magic, stuff like that.
Sealed products, single cards, supplies, and related collectibles. memorabilia, that type of stuff.
Okay. And then so like schedule wise, does that also vary by game and creator, like how they want to coordinate that? Or is it tournaments, play action every day, mixed with learn to play, etc.?
Yeah,
like 3-day events, right? I'm
sorry?
Are they 3-day events typically?
Yeah, they're always 3-day events, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Something like Learn to Play typically runs for the majority of each day. Tournaments will usually be either on demand or they'll be at scheduled times, and all of that stuff is actually advertised on the event's website. And the artist will usually set up for whatever hours they choose to set up. But because there's so many people at the events, it typically makes more sense for them, or it usually makes more sense for them to actually come early, stay late, and a lot of them do that. So,
yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so to date, we were talking a bit before we went live here about the path for Sorcery. There's been many, I would say, mixed scale and size community-run events for Sorcery. Sorcery has been at Gen Con the last 2 years and Spiel Essen. So this moving into SCGcon is now a major step of yet another venue that draws thousands of people, a few thousand per venue, like you say. And it's, did you say like for each of these, Houston, Vegas, Baltimore, that they tend to draw more of a local regional community for each of those, or do people come from all over the place?
People do come from all over the place. Well, let me back up. So for the most part, people will come from all over the place, but the majority of the attendance is usually from within like a 500-mile radius. The exception to that is six of the 11 SCGcon events that we run. I guess that's actually not an exception. That's the majority of the events that we run. The flagship event that's offered at those events are Magic the Gathering regional championships, where players who have qualified to play in those regional championship events, usually at their local game stores, those players, a lot more of them are coming in from all over the country.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so far the to my knowledge, it's just the 3, which 3 is a lot actually at the tail end of the year here for Sorcery to make an appearance. Is there more plans beyond that into 2026 at this time, or is that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the reason why there's only 3 is because there's only 3 events left from the time that they start joining us until the end of the year.
Okay.
So they're joining us in Houston, Baltimore, and Las Vegas, and those are our last 3 SCGcon events of the year before we move into 2026.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you partner with new games, it tends to be like a longer term relationship where they tend to come to many or all of your events. I think I heard on another podcast you have about a dozen, 10 to 12 per year or so. Is it?
So for SCGcon events right now, we have 11.
Okay. And the same games tend to be at all of them throughout the year?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, it varies. So we'll have some publishers that will have they'll have their own presence at maybe 6 of the events, but not all of the events. But then we're still running tournaments and stuff for them, usually at all of the events.
Okay, gotcha. I'm trying to check the chat here. We are live, and there's some questions coming in.
Fire away.
Oh, this is a good one. When will we know the artist lineup for each event? Is there a rule of thumb where you start making announcements for each of the locations, which artists will be there for Sorcery and for other games, I guess, in general?
So usually when we launch one of the mini sites, we usually launch it with only the flagship registration for the flagship event. And then we go back shortly afterwards and we just fill in the rest. And I'm not exactly sure what it varies for each event. I'm not exactly sure what type of schedule our team tends to do that for. Yeah. So I guess the answer to that question is if there is a schedule with which we publish or post that information, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's usually probably about 2 months before the event itself. I know currently we have Orlando up, and I don't believe, I could be mistaken about this, But for Baltimore, I think we may actually only have the main event up and not the rest of the side events and stuff. But I could be mistaken about that.
Okay, so it kind of varies by venue, by team. You have teams for these locations. Okay, so we'll just keep an eye out, look for updates on the on your core website for the event periodically.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of sorcery artists, like even before we began talking to the folks, the sorcery folks, we had a number of artists who had done work on for the sorcery TCG at our events because they were attending in the as a magic artist, and they just happened to be doing work for sorcery as well.
Yep, a lot of overlap. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever have other artists beyond like core published, like alter specialists or up and coming artists? Or is it typically tied to the games that are represented at SCGcon?
Because space is usually a concern and space is usually at a premium, even though we don't charge artists to appear at our events. But the space itself is just at a premium. We tend to limit it to only artists who have actually had their work published in one of the games that we're actually promoting and supporting at the event.
Sure, makes sense. Okay. And on that point, is it for vendors and actually for the games themselves, is it pretty competitive to even like get a partnership with SCGcon? And say I started an indie, right? Like what's your criteria to partner with a new game? Do you try to wait until they're a little established and have some buzz around them? Or how does that process work?
Yeah, like if you were to just start up your own TCG right out of the gate and like you were to just send me an email saying like, hey, I've got this new TCG. I want to attend as an SCGcon event. I believe that we may be willing to accommodate you. However, at least initially, you may actually have to do it as like a specialty vendor and not as like a TCG partner, at least not initially. Gotcha.
Yeah, it makes sense. As an event coordinator, you want to partner with games that have a following and draw more attendance to your events. So it's kind of, it's got to be a value prop for both sides. Do these events typically sell out and kind of reach capacity every time?
It's pretty rare nowadays that an event will sell out because we have a pretty good idea of what to expect. And so we kind of book venues accordingly. And we're usually like, we've done this long enough and we've gotten, I guess, good enough at being able to kind of predict what type of attendance we're going to get for each event that we can usually do it within a fair degree of accuracy.
Gotcha. Yeah, that dovetails into one of the questions we had in the chat here. You mentioned there's 11 events per year. Is it always the same city and the same venue, or does that change?
No. So we have a pretty lengthy list of venues that are options for us to use, and these are in cities all across the country. And when it comes time to start putting a schedule together, we'll just reach out to all the venues, we'll get their availability, and then we'll just start putting a schedule together. And there's like 15, 20 different criteria, things that we need to look at for each event. Things that you might not even think of, like what else is going on in that city on that day in the area of the event. Because if there's like another huge event happening, like that other huge event may actually cause hotel prices to double, might make it really difficult to find parking, might make the cost of flights increase significantly, and stuff like that are things that we want to try to avoid.
Yeah, I can totally.
So we evaluate a ton of different criteria, and then we ultimately put together the schedule of 11 events. But we're also having to, we have to work around, for example, if Gen Con, which we talked about before, if Gen Con's in Indianapolis, we don't want to be in Cincinnati, Ohio on that same weekend. That would be terrible.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say what you're saying is totally relatable, because I was part of the Sorcery Con organizing team last year, and it just we didn't know this until after it was booked. I don't know, somehow the hotel pricing was still affordable, but there was a major car show going on that actually coincidentally Ed Bear Jr. was at, and he was able to pop in one of the nights and come over to Sorcery Con for a few hours. But yeah, that absolutely does have a factor. And so in these Magic events, you know, through your company and others, there's these big Magic cons going on, it seems like, all the time. So we're also looking at how do we avoid overlap, because it is definitely a mixed audience. As we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of Magic interests, legacy Magic players, flesh and blood players that maybe want to get away from the more hyper competitive and get into a more Sorcery is kind of more of a relaxed, fun, casual vibe. So it's kind of on that point, actually, it is a little interesting that they seem to be leaning into the tournament scene more. They just announced like a structured, at first they were saying this is a kitchen table TCG, right? That's how it's marketed. But now they've rolled out like a whole supported tournament structure where stores get prize support and they can register to host an event, and then they'll get the prize support, etc. And now SCG Con is another step in that direction. Would you say your events are more like on the competitive spectrum, or is there kind of a mixed bag based on the creator, if they tend to do more learn to play or just kind of like fun, friendly competition versus more like, I guess, high-end prize support and stuff like that?
Yeah, so with Sorcery, we've specifically like crafted the experience so that there's something for every type of player, whether you're somebody who has never, like, who is just picking up their first pack of cards or their first pre-constructed deck at SCG Con, or if you are like somebody who like ultimately wants to, win, come in first place, super competitive, like spiky type player. We've got something for everybody. So like it starts with the learn to play events that we were talking about before. Those are like that area, and those that not really events, but they're designed for people who are wanting to do just that, to learn how to play. But then there's other types of events. There's what they call community events, which are 3-round events where everybody who participates in those events gets a prize. And then there's events that they're calling champion events, and those are more competitive events. Those are typically like 5 to 6 round events, and they could actually be even more rounds than that. And then those events will cut to a single elimination top 8, and then prizes are awarded to players based on how they finish in those events. Okay. And then the formats for both of those events are pre-constructed decks, sealed, or constructed for both the community events and for the champion events. And then at all 3 of the SCG cons that the Sorcery folks are going to be joining us at, Houston, Baltimore, and Las Vegas, we're going to be offering one of their Crossroad Championship events at all 3 of those.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, very much like Gen Con, I would say. I think Spielessen was similar last year. Both Gen Cons, where you kind of get a mixed bag where, like you say, it appeals to all interest categories, and hopefully they will draw out an artist or a few artists. Ed is perfectly on brand with the Dragon Lord just coming out. However, the timing is also interesting because we're talking about, I know Baltimore is like late October-ish, because that's the one I've actually going to go to, so I've been more keenly aware of that one. I forget that, are Houston and Vegas also around that time frame in October?
So Houston is October 17th through 19th, and then Baltimore is the following weekend, October 24th through 26th, and then Las Vegas is a month later. That's November 21st to 23rd.
Oh, November. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So we just had Dragon Lord just came out, and there's wild buzz around it. I don't know how closely you've been following the market dynamics of Sorcery, but this was wild. Because there just is not, the demand is overwhelming, right? And some of us that are like super into the art aspect, like Ed and I were like, of course Ed's going to say he's the artist, right? But like me, as like, I'm a big supporter and fan of his work too, and we're like, this is going to be a grand slam. The players were skeptical because there's 13 cards and you get all the cards that you need for your deck in one box, right? So I always thought like this was going to be, I don't know if short printed is the right word, but not like mass printed like a core set. But it's been so far on the extreme of the spectrum where the demand has so dramatically overwhelmed supply that a lot of the stores are really not getting much supply of it. And you really have to go to these events to get it. So if they're going to bring it to your events in October, November, that, I mean, I think a lot of these stores got anywhere from 2 to 10 boxes on average. It seems they're going to be gone within the next couple of weeks, right? And then there'll be nothing until your October events. So a lot of people are going to turn out, I think, hoping to buy it there, and that will be in focus. But we're also expecting this next set, Gothic, to come out potentially October, November. I think they said by the end of the year. There's no release date yet. So you're kind of like straddling that window with 2 of the events in October, 1 in November, where Gothic is either going to just be out or on the cusp of being out. Dragon Lord's also going to be in high demand. It's like beautiful timing for a confluence of factors for mass interest and a big turnout and a big awareness situation, just like the Gen Con that you witnessed firsthand.
Yeah. So yeah, everything kind of seems to be lining up. So
yeah, so I don't know. And like some of these artists, I do wonder, I'll keep an eye out of which Magic artists are attending. Is it predominantly Magic? Do you also get Flesh and Blood artists, or are there other games where they bring artists as well?
So like with Flesh and Blood, for example, like Mark, I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Poole.
Sure.
Mark Poole has done a ton of Magic cards, but he's also done a bunch of Flesh and Blood cards, and Mark attends a lot of our events.
Oh, great.
So most, I'm trying to think, but if I recall correctly, we do usually have a number of Flesh and Blood artists at our events. However, they're primarily Magic artists who happen to have done Flesh and Blood cards. Unless we're specifically running a Flesh and Blood event for LSS, like a U.S. Nationals or their World Championship, which we're going to be running for them later this year in Philadelphia. We don't tend to have many artists who are like specifically Flesh and Blood artists, and that's really all they've illustrated within the space.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, and I would imagine that Sorcery will probably work the same way, although I'm sure at this point, like Ed would, for example, would probably consider himself to be a Sorcery artist who happens to have done Magic cards in the past.
Right. Yeah, it is a mixed bag. I mean, Drew Tucker is one that's active still in Magic and Sorcery, but a lot of the, I think, thinking through some of the names that are in Sorcery that were formerly Magic are just that they're formerly Magic. You know, they kind of, that the whole situation with it going from WotC to Hasbro and the layoffs that happened back in the 90s, a lot just kind of never returned to Magic. You know, Tony Sudlow is another one that's been away from it a long time. And Eric's really Tony Sudlow. Yeah. So a lot of these artists that were big names like back in the day in Magic and were kind of disenfranchised from that game and that whole vibe are now being pulled back in by Eric, who's trying to reinvoke those 90s throwback kind of like essence of art design. So it's really an eclectic group. And then there's also out at Sorcery Con, we had some of the heavy metal album cover artists come. So it's the stylistic diversity is just amazing in the game. It's a differentiator and it's all hand painted. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So awesome. I'll be keen to see like your list of names coming out. And there is, you mentioned Mark Poole. There's rumor, could Mark Poole join Sorcery? I know it's a small community, and like I was talking to Menges at the IX art show last couple of years, and he's like, all my Magic buddies and like artists in this scene are asking me about Sorcery. How can I get into Sorcery? Could you put in a good word for me? So I think we're going to see more and more coming on board, and that'll be exciting. And maybe we'll see them at your show. Doug Kovacs, I think. I don't know if you know Doug Kovacs from Magic. He was also at Gen Con, but not at the Sorcery booth. So it is kind of like a small world where you get a lot of overlap.
Yeah, well, I mean, the more games that we support at SCGcon events that an artist has illustrated cards for, the more fans they can potentially be appealing to at those events. So that's cool.
Yeah. So at these, is it the same games at all of the events, or does that really vary by venue as well and region?
No, I mean, it's basically the same games at all of the events. The only time that usually tends to change is when we like partner with a new publisher and start bringing their game into the event. So the roster of games that we're supporting tends to only increase. It's not, at this particular event, we've got these games, but at this one, we only have
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And do you tend to bring on like a lot of new games every year or throughout the year?
We've been pretty aggressive with it lately, but that's just because there were a lot of really good options for us to reach out to and potentially partner with, and I think all of them have worked out fantastic so far.
Yeah.
At this point, we're getting a little pickier and a little more selective, just because we've already got so much going on. We just, probably over the course of the past year, I think we partnered with six new publishers over the past year. And
Okay.
I think we'd be hard pressed to partner with another 6 publishers in 2026 and expand from, I think, what is currently 8 to something like 14 or 15. So at this point, we're just being more selective, but if the right opportunity comes along, we'll say yes, and then we'll figure out how to make it happen.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I was trying to kind of feel out the situation on how big of a deal is this for Sorcery. Are you bringing on a lot of new games, or you mentioned you're getting more selective? So I think that is significant, and the timing of where it is in the life cycle and trying to grow. They need to grow that awareness to appeal to new stores, new fans, and showing up at these events brings a lot of mixed audience. And because of the vibe of the game, the play style, the artistic approach, I have noticed that it strongly resonates with Magic and Flesh and Blood, who are 2 staples in your events for the past several years. So I'm excited about the potential here.
Well, I definitely think that they're doing a lot of things right. Like specifically with ensuring that they're going to have that learn to play presence at each of our events, because we're bringing in thousands of people who may not necessarily be interested in their product, but they are interested in TCGs. And so if you can create an opportunity where you can expose them to a product that they just don't know exists, you have the potential to create a new player for the game or a new collector for the game every time you're able to do that. And so they're putting that learn to play presence, and we're going to have all of their products for sale, like their pre-constructed decks and Arthurian legends and beta and stuff like that. So that we'll ensure that their products are actually always available for sale at our event, so that if somebody actually learns how to play the game and then they want to obtain more product, that is there for them to purchase. So I think it's going to work out well for them. Yeah,
and again, the timing's great because we're in between sets, but there's been a bunch of spoilers for Gothic as well. So we're kind of like in this period where we're loving the Dragon Lord and we're like chomping at the bit to see more Gothic, and it's either going to be out or it's going to be very close. So that's going to be
City of Glass.
Yeah. That was one of the promos. They had like a variant of that, I think, during the spoiler season. So yeah, it's exciting, and there'll be new art with every set. There's a bunch of new artists announced too, so I'm sure we'll discover more overlap. Scott Kirshner was another one that came from the Magic scene that was just announced. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. One person had asked, I skipped this question, I wanted to come back to it. With the hotel arrangements, is there do you guys do like partner hotels where there's discounted rates, or you recommend they're closest to the venue, that type of thing, logistics wise?
So we usually partner with 1 or 2 specific hotels, and once we put all the information up on the website, that the hotel information is usually part of that.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Do we acquire that do you have event exclusive promos? Someone's asking about promo cards.
Yeah, we do. I thought a few minutes ago I mentioned City of Glass, and that's actually why. That's actually why I was mentioning it. So
I forgot. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that we offer at SCGcon for a lot of the publishers that we work with is we have a prize wall on which we have a bunch of their different products available to choose from. People play in the events, they win prize wall tickets, and then they can redeem the tickets at the prize wall and get some of the products. And some publishers actually provide us with exclusive products that people can only actually get from attending an SCGcon event or redeeming prize wall tickets at an SCGcon prize wall. And the Sorcery folks are doing that for the Gothic card, City of Glass, which is going to be they're going to be making it into an SCG Con exclusive playmat that you can only actually obtain through the prize wall.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the news has been coming out so fast and furious that I remember seeing the card and the playmat. They did tease that. I think it was by Adam Burke was the artist, who was in Alpha, but he was not in Arthurian Legend. So it was exciting to see him coming back.
Yeah, it is Adam Burke. Another thing that this is not necessarily event related, but they're also going to be creating an alternate art foil version of the City of Glass card, promotional card, and that is something that you're only going to be able to get in a bundle that we'll be offering on our website and at our events, like through the Star City Games sales booth.
Oh, awesome!
And that'll be tied in with Gothic when that comes out. So we haven't actually determined like how much product somebody will actually have to buy to obtain one of those cards for free. It would just actually be included as part of the bundle, but that's how that card is going to be offered.
Exciting. Okay. Yeah, that was one of the questions. How do we get that? Yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of booth, so how do you determine like size of the booth presence? Like, is Sorcery going to have a large booth? Is it going to be like a small one? And then they're going to need some dedicated play space, I guess, for the tournaments, for the learn to play. I assume the company is going to be manning their own booth, and what kind of size presence will they have? It was small at Gen Con the first year, and then it kind of got bigger this past year. I don't know if that's normal for conventions or it kind of varies based on a number of factors.
Yeah, so that type of stuff is actually usually worked out between the publisher and the members of my organized play team. That's not something that directly involves me, but those two parties can usually like we've done this enough to be able to work with each of the publishers and let them know like what we believe would be the optimal type of setup for them, and then the publishers usually know what it is that they're looking for as well. So between the two of them, those two parties can usually work that out.
Okay, so to be determined. Yeah, it's interesting. We saw that you're right. We got the prize card and the playmat, but the details of like what they're going to do there have been kind of sparse so far. So you've given us some insights, but I know it seems like it's very much still coming together and taking shape, and they're probably working directly with your team for each of the locations to get the word out in the coming, hopefully, weeks, so we could plan ahead. And but I mean, regardless, with Dragonlord and Gothic, the timing's perfect. A lot of people are going to be coming for Sorcery, and it's going to reach other people from other games. So I'm thrilled about that. I can't wait to go in Baltimore. I guess I told you to go an hour. We're at 42 minutes. I think I hit like most of the main points. I really wanted to give fans a sense of what it's like to be there as a player, a collector, and an art enthusiast. And you definitely hit all three of those in spades. Is there anything else we haven't touched on that fans should know about the SCG Con experience?
It's just a lot of fun. We've tried to design an experience that has something for everybody. If you're into TCGs, sorry, my dog's trying to jump up on me here.
No problem.
So we've tried to design an experience that, like, if you're a fan of TCGs, and especially if you're a fan of the specific TCGs that we support at SCG Con events, that there's something for you at those events, whether you're a player, whether you're a collector, whether you're just a fan of the art, whether you're just a casual fan, whether you just want to come out and just hang out and just be around other like-minded people, maybe do some trading. Like, you come to an SCG Con event, there's something for you there. Awesome.
Yeah, it's exactly what I want to hear. That it sounds amazing. I told you I haven't been to one personally myself, but I'll be up there for Baltimore. I usually go to the IX Art Show in Reading. It's the same weekend. There's some talk like Sorcery fans are going to be going back and forth to see the Sorcery artists there because it's doable. They have a night showcase. What are the Gen Con hours? Is it a pretty long day, or does it wrap up in early evening typically?
You mean the hours at an SCG Con event?
Yeah.
So the hours at an SCG Con event tend to be pretty long, but that's largely dictated by the tournaments. Sure. And so if you're not playing in some of the larger events, like, obviously you can come and go whenever you want to.
Okay. Yep.
So it can be as long or as short of a day as you want it to be, unless you're playing in very specific events.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes sense. So pretty typical of a con experience.
Mm-hmm.
So great. Yeah. I'm excited to check it out. Do you tend to go yourself, or do you leave it to your teams? It must be hard to get around to 11 places per year.
I don't make it to all of the events. I had taken a break from just about everything for a while, but as of this year, I've started going to a lot more of them.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to connect with you and meet up in person if the opportunity arises. I got to get to a Gen Con one of these years, but I'd love to see you at an SCG Con or even make it down to Roanoke and see your store.
Yeah, if you're ever going to come down, shoot me a message and
Sure.
I'll definitely set some time aside. We can do lunch or something like that. But I'm trying to think of what my schedule looks like for the rest of this year. I know that I'm not sure I'm going to be attending Baltimore, but I am planning on going to Las Vegas, and I will very likely be at MagicCon down in Atlanta.
Okay. Do you have a as part of SCG? Do you go to MagicCon, or you just go as kind of like a Magic fan, an individual?
So Star City Games has an exhibitor booth at every MagicCon event here in the U.S., but I personally would just be attending just to see a bunch of people that I just only get to see once or twice a year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anytime you can get 20 people that you only get to see once or twice a year all together in one place, you try to prioritize getting to it. So.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and hopefully, leave it to Eric and his team to really grow Sorcery to be something massive. My goal is to grow art enthusiasm massively, and SorceryCon is one of the coordinators for that. So if we can scale that large enough, maybe we can convince some of the SCGcon team to come out and vend at SorceryCon.
Well,
ways, right?
So you said the first SorceryCon was in Washington, and then the second one, did you say was in Las Vegas?
It was in the very first one was in Seattle, Washington, and then there was another one this year in Seattle, Washington. The big one last year, though, and that's a smaller scale. It's a more modest venue, maybe 80 to 100 people. But the Vegas one we did last year was about 400 to 500 people range. This year, we're still looking at venues. Actually, this year, it's not going to happen in this calendar year. It'll probably be sometime in January. We're actually looking at the SCG Con events and assuming Sorcery is going to be there, and that's going to be a big draw. So we're trying to not do it the same weekend as you guys. But fit it in there sometime after the new year. And hopefully, we had 400, 500 last year. We'd love to have more than that this year. But and hopefully these cons will be a catalyst for that. But hopefully we can get that to be a big, sizable, annual, once a year type event.
Are you trying to keep it on the West Coast?
No, not necessarily. We've been looking all over the West Coast. So we drew a lot of West Coasters from California, Northwest last year, Midwest. But now we're trying to grab some of the East Coasters too. So we've been looking at venues all along the East Coast, North and South, to kind of feel out what's available and pricing. When you're at 400 people, as I'm sure from the early days, it's hard to not lose money on these events, frankly. So, venue costs, all the things you're talking about with competing tournaments or events and how you can draw enough people and sell enough tickets for events and just, access to the event. And trying to help out the artists and all these things. There's so many costs. So we're in the stage of looking for venues and looking at timing for early next year is where we're at.
Do you charge an entry fee to get into the event itself?
We did last year. Yeah. We probably kind of need to at this stage until we grow large enough where that isn't really a factor to try to cover our cost. I mean, Vegas was wildly expensive. The food minimum alone was outrageous. So maybe it wasn't the best venue selection, but it's probably also typical of the casinos.
Where did you run in Vegas?
It was at the I'm blanking on the name of the casino is at. Someone in chat's got to help me out. I don't know. Someone in chat will chime in. MGM Park. That's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't because I was thinking we looked at some of the others and it was tight, because they had that big car show. We didn't realize that until after we booked it. And we're like, oh, well, no wonder it's been kind of sparse. But yeah, MGM Park. It was nice, but it was expensive.
Yeah, but for that many people, though, you have a lot more options than something the size of an SCG Con.
Yeah.
Because you only need a hotel ballroom of a certain size, and you can accommodate an event that size.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice for that scale, right? To have everybody. So we had artists basically around the whole room. We had 15 artists, which I was really proud of. I had 14 artists from Sorcery itself, and then I had one altar artist there. A lot of the Magic artists were there, and a lot of the new artists that are making their kind of breakthrough with Sorcery. So it was a great mixed experience. And then all the game tables were right along the middle, so you get to enjoy that whole experience. Is your layout similar, where it's all one large convention hall and you have the artists kind of co-located with the games and vendors?
It varies. All of our rooms are laid out differently, but there are certain things that we try to have be consistent from event to event, but mostly just because it makes sense.
Okay.
We never want to set our vendors up like in the back corner of a room because they're paying a lot of money to be there.
Sure. Yeah. That's
Stuff
a major
like that.
benefit. And then having the artists, we found that like having the artists co-located with the game action, because there was another venue up in I forget the venue too, but another group of fans had a event up in Baltimore last year, and it was kind of in multiple rooms. So there's pros and cons. There was like an artist and vendor room, but the first day was booming, right? And I was actually a vendor there with the stuff I do with artists. So the first day was great. A lot of traffic, a lot of people coming in to see the artists. I got to meet a lot of fans and stuff. But then the second day was flat. Everyone was at the gaming events. So when we did Sorcery Con in Vegas, being all in the same room was amazing, because like in between games, the players come over and then they get interested in the art, right? They see the original paintings that the artists bring and their artist proofs and prints, and the artists do great as well too, which is important, that they can cover their costs and make money coming out to these events. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I look forward to Baltimore. I hope I get to meet you sometime. Maybe it won't happen in Baltimore, but maybe we'll get you to come to a Sorcery Con if this game really takes off. And we're all very optimistic. I mean, it's a very exciting project. It's very unique and differentiated, in my opinion. But I'm looking forward to see the other games that you guys carry too, and just kind of discovering what the whole scene's like a little more broadly with and beyond Sorcery at your venues. So all the best to you and the Sorcery team on that.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out and extending the invitation.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Take care.
Have a good night, everybody.